If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call-in talk show all about the Wheel of Time. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about the Fourth Age, speculating about what might happen if there's a Fourth Age, what we believe will be the Fourth Age. But before I bring my guests in, before we begin doing that, I want to remind you that this upcoming Sunday, yes, this Sunday we're going to have one of these every news, leaks, and rumors, speculation kind of episodes. We're going to break down all of Season 1 episodes for WoT on Prime. And thankfully, I have my expert guest, Adam Whitehead from Wurtzone and Dragonmount, John from What Up, Jen from tel'aran'rhiod, and yes, Geeky Yeri, our Brown Aja detective. That one's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you're there 4 p.m. on Sunday. And then the following WoT Wednesday, we're going to be doing our first actor highlight. We're going to be talking all about Madeline Madden with Lee Butler from Tor.com and also Craig Hanks from the Legendarian Podcast. We're going to dig into all of her works, discuss what we think maybe she'll bring to this role, where she might be strong, where she might not be as strong in this role as Egwene. So yeah, I can't wait for those 2 episodes. That's going to be a lot of fun. Now that being said, tonight is all about speculating, and that's what I love the most. And apparently my 2 guests also love this too. So let me welcome them to the show. Welcome, Collin and Seth. How you both doing tonight?
Hey, how's it going?
Fantastic. Collin is with the Randland TV Podcast. Collin, what do you guys have coming up here on your podcast? What can you tell our viewers about what you do?
Okay. Actually, yeah, we have a new episode coming out, probably dropping this weekend. We're going to be talking about the 2 Amyrlins. So it's kind of a discussion around Egwene versus our best friend, Elida, right? So yes, we're kind of examining kind of their pros and cons of those two different styles and 2 different personalities and leadership.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. You can find that link in the description below of this video. And Seth, WoTSpoilers, man, you've been around for, I don't know, forever at this point, right?
I think we're coming up on 3.5 years now. Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, yeah. What is it you guys have coming up? right now?
Well, right now we're in the middle of Lord of Chaos. I guess just starting that one out, and the real exciting project is we're doing like the spoiler con, which we've done now twice. So this will be the third annual spoiler con, which
awesome.
You should definitely check out. There's going to be a ton of exciting guests, including Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, Ariel Burgess, and a bunch of other. Maria's going to be there. A bunch of names that you guys have heard of, and we're getting a bunch of people to just do some fun panels all weekend. So it's all virtual and it's all free. You just got to sign up. So
awesome. Yeah, I think you can find that link also in the description. If you don't find it there, just look up SpoilerCon. You will find it on the internet. Or you can always just follow WoTSpoilers on social media, and you'll hear all about what's coming up. And that's it. Is that the beginning of October?
October 2nd, 3rd. Yep.
Awesome. October 2nd, 3rd, SpoilerCon for those Wheel of Time fans that want some virtual convention, Wheel of Time convention content. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Can't wait for it.
And
so
the shirt from last year. So
nice. Yeah. We definitely have some merch part of this. So you both, I brought you both in because I think you're going to have fun with this topic. The Fourth Age and the Aiel. And a lot of this came about, right? And I guess I should remind everybody, I feel like if you showed up at a Fourth Age discussion, you know there's going to be spoilers. But we'll throw up a spoiler banner just to remind everyone, yes, we're spoiling the book and some, I guess you could think about it that way. So I guess you're going to spoil something beyond the book. That is to say, we're going to bring in quotes from Brandon, Maria, and talk about what might happen later. So that being said, this discussion came about because of Towers of Midnight. This Aviendha's trip to Rhuidean and her second trip through the columns tel'aran'rhiod actually kind of created this conversation among fandom. We weren't talking. I mean, I've been online talking about this books for a long time. We weren't really breaking down the Fourth Age, not until this moment happened, and it created a lot of questions from fans afterwards, because all of a sudden, regardless of what happened at the end of Third Age, they're like, wait a second, what's happening to the Aiel? I want to know. So let's bring up some questions. I want to throw these 4 questions up and then dig into this. These were questions that fans asked Brandon and Maria, and I'll just read through these really quick. This first quote was for Brandon on Reddit. Who wrote the scene in which Aviendha flashed forward to the future? Brandon said, the glass pillars was me. One of my big pitches to Harriet and company was that we needed to take risks and chances with these stories, because that's what RJ would have done. If we played it exactly safe, we would have had a bland ending to the story. We couldn't always take the same risk that RJ would have, but we needed to have a dynamic plot where characters in the world grew and became something different. Fantastic quote, right? That was an obsession with fans, like, who wrote what? Interesting that Brandon was pushing this idea. Now, people started asking a little bit more detailed questions about the actual event that happened. So this next quote we have, is Aviendha the only one to go forward in time through the tel'aran'rhiod? Brandon Sanderson said, as far as we know, yes. That's kind of like an Aes Sedai answer. Let's be honest with that. Let me put these last 2 up, and then I want to talk to you about these quotes. This third one, Aviendha's scene in the columns at Rhuidean was wonderful. Will the columns always do that now, or has Aviendha broken them for good? Brandon said, Raffo. And of course, Maria followed it up with, the question was Aviendha's usage of the crystal columns to see the future something only she could do or something anyone could do? And of course, we get a Raffo. So we have this basic idea of how this came to be. Do you remember, Seth, your initial reaction to this moment, like when you read Aviendha's scenes? Like, were you as affected as everyone else was by this?
Absolutely. Well, and because the initial scenes are obviously so meaningful. They're honestly some of the best writing in the whole series. Yeah. And to see Brandon take a crack at that was amazing, and to see him do it in that sort of mirror way was really cool. Really happy that he did that. Yeah,
I agree with that. It was one of my favorite. Towers of Midnight is one of my favorite books, in part because of this actual piece of it, Brandon's writings here. Did you immediately go to your speculation? Did you feel like you knew what was happening, or were you kind of left in the dark and kind of just wondering also?
I feel like I got it a heartbeat before Aviendha. I was like, oh, it's the future, because there's a couple of things in there with the Ravens, but she figures it out pretty quick, and he spells it out pretty obviously at the end of that she's seeing these future visions. Yeah. And I'm fully under the opinion that anyone who goes through there is going to see a new vision based on current reality, and it's a feedback loop.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's where we're going to go, right? You like the feedback loop option here, that anyone's that's going to happen. Collin, where were you? Did you remember when this happened? Did this blow your mind when it was, or did you just kind of take it in stride?
I feel like I probably took it a little in stride, like, oh wow, that's cool, but then not really like realizing the full scope of what exactly was happening when I first read it. And then looking back, it's kind of like the reverberations of that, like, whoa, like what the hell is going to happen?
Yeah. Wait, like what does that mean, and what does that mean to the end of the books?
Totally.
It was an interesting strategy to bring this up before we knew how the books ended, right? Did it diminish the experience of A Memory of Light for you at all? Kind of thinking that there might be this future in the Fourth Age and what it might look like.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it diminished anything at all. If anything, I think it only enhances because it allows you to ask more questions and continue, as we're doing now, like kind of digging into the texture of it.
Yeah, I don't think I ever thought that it was going to end and be the end. That's not. I never was there, so I wasn't affected by that. For you, Seth, was it fun to know that there was going to be a future, or did you just assume there was and Rand was going to win and it was going to be fine?
Well, I mean, that future exists assuming he wins, right? The same thing with Min's visions, right? Like assuming the pattern doesn't end, there's a future. And I never found it to be particularly limiting, because it's not a future to me that was ever set in stone. Because if you're seeing the visions of the future, she says very quickly, well, I just changed the name of my daughter and it's not going to come true. Like, very easy to invalidate those visions. So you can make changes to the future. So both it gives us hints without locking it in. And I think that's just a wonderful way of addressing the future.
Yeah.
And it doesn't guarantee a win either.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think we're going to bring this back up, this idea of changing the future by just changing a name. But that's going to come back up here. Collin, does this make you want to see someone else, let's say it's in 40 years, whatever it is, like 100 years from now, are you hoping that our own future sees the future be written of the Wheel of Time? Do you want to see people write into the Fourth Age? Do you want to see people write into the Second Age? Do you want to see television shows and spin-offs related to things that actually we don't see happen in the books?
Right. That's a really good question. I'm really torn about that. And part of me wants it because I just want the content,
Right.
But another part of me is like, no, let's just not mess anything up. Let's not screw it up, or, I mean, who's to say? Maybe it'll be great. But there's a risk there as well that I'm not sure I want to take.
Okay, but I want, unfortunately, live television. No one's watching.
Yeah.
So, yes, you want it or you don't want it.
Oh, no.
You have to, this is a 50-50. You can't that middling position doesn't help.
Okay. No, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say leave it where it's at. Yeah, I enjoy the speculation. I think that's fun.
Yeah, I'm going to ask this to chat. For those of you that are watching us on Twitter and Facebook, we won't see your answers. You can always jump over here and join us on YouTube. But I want to ask YouTube chat here, do you want to see the future? If you had to say yes or no, thumbs up for yes, no, thumbs down sometime, maybe your own children, your grandchildren, whatever it is. Do you want this world that we're living in now to have future writings, basically, future development of these worlds, whether or not it's on TV or whatever it is? Maybe it's, more of the, graphic books that they were making before, the graphic novels. So I'm kind of curious what people are going to say there. The same question to you, Seth. Are you no on this?
I'm a hard yes. I mean, because unlike Martin, we have a finished series, start to finish, and it exists, and you can add stuff to that, and we can say that's wonderful. It gives us great information, or we can say, you know what, what sequel? I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we've done that with other fandoms. We can do it with this one too. So, why not give them a shot?
Yeah.
But if it's also a WAFA, watch and find out, right? If the show fails miserably, like, no, I'm not going to want more terrible content based on Wheel of Time. If the show nails it to a T and they bring back the actors and they continue, in that vein, yes, it's So, it depends.
It's so funny.
It's exactly what you said. He couldn't answer. What you said, Collin couldn't answer. So
yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny watching. Like, I'm watching chat like fly by as you're doing this. It's like thumb up, thumb down, thumb up, thumb up, thumb down. And then there's a lot of people kind of taking that because I can't bully them into answering me. They're over there like, maybe yes, maybe no. So I think this is it's an interesting question. Because and Brandon did make this really compelling, right? He opened this question up, at least as far as the Fourth Age, at least for me. I want to know, and that's partly why we're talking tonight. So let's dig into what actually happened with Aviendha and the column tel'aran'rhiod. I want to dig into the speculation about this piece. And so I brought along my friends, 4 quotes from the books. These are ones we've probably heard before, but I'll just read them really quickly, and let's discuss what this might portend for what actually happened. So this first book quote, Taylor, you want to give us the first quote here? And this one's from Towers of Midnight, chapter 48. It's included in that knowledge was the impression that she'd return here to Rhuidean. She had known, though only stepping into this courtyard again had sparked some of those memories to life in her mind. Then later on, she says, or she thinks, Aiel would continue to visit this place for centuries, as they had for centuries, and each of them would learn something that was now common knowledge. That bothered her deeply. Rhuidean was to be the capstone of that process, the final test of mental endurance, but that was gone now. So the second quote, she said, Aviendha had manifested a talent in the One Power, the ability to identify tel'aran'rhiod. Could she determine exactly what the glass pillars did? They couldn't have been created specifically for the Aiel, could they? Most things of great power like this hailed from very ancient days. The pillars would have been created during the Age of Legends, then adapted to the purpose of showing the Aiel their true past. So she's actually thinking about this idea, right? She's like, this tel'aran'rhiod kind of sucks now, right? She's like, this is like useless. In fact, she was upset enough by this idea that she walked up to the tel'aran'rhiod, right? And she basically touches the tel'aran'rhiod. And we have that quote here, and I think it's an important one to point out. So let's do that one also. She says, she sensed the powerful aura of the pillar. It was far more potent than any of the tel'aran'rhiod she had handled with Elaine. Indeed, the pillars seemed alive somehow. It was almost as if she could sense an awareness from them. That gave her a chill. Was she touching the pillar, or was it touching her? She tried to read tel'aran'rhiod as she had done before, but this one was vast, incomprehensible like the One Power itself. She inhaled sharply, disoriented by the weight of what she felt. It was as if she had suddenly fallen into a deep, dark pit. She snapped her eyes open, pulling her hand away, palm quivering. This was beyond her. She was an insect trying to grasp the size and mass of a mountain. She took a breath to steady herself, then shook her head. There was nothing more to be done. She turned from the glass pillars and took a step. So we know what happens when she takes that step. She has her first vision. I found this being interesting. It was outside of the pillars, right? She touched the pillars, but she stepped away from them. She wasn't within the circle, and she only has one vision, and that ends, and she could have walked at that point. So what does this tell us? I mean, Collin, when you think about this, she was kind of upset about that. We know she has some talent that she thinks is just understanding tel'aran'rhiod. That's what she understands that to mean. And then she goes up to it, and she can sense it in ways that I'm assuming others cannot, that her talent is somehow related to what she's sensing. Then she senses it that maybe that it's alive in some way. Do you think this tel'aran'rhiod is alive and sentient in some form or fashion, or was that just Aviendha imagining things?
I actually do. I have a theory that this particular tel'aran'rhiod is inherently connected to the Jinn Aiel. That's my theory.
Okay.
I think that this tel'aran'rhiod, when we first come upon it, is found amongst just a trove of tel'aran'rhiod, right?
Yep.
All of those being something that could be removed from the place. They could be moved, including the three rings, right? This is the only one that really can't, because it's it's in the earth itself, right? It's
like built in.
It's built into the earth. It's protruding from the earth itself. And personally, I feel it's, in a way, it's almost metaphorical. It is rooted to the land itself, that land being part of the Jinn Aiel. So for me, I actually do kind of believe that this particular tel'aran'rhiod was specifically built and attuned for the purpose of helping the Aiel commune with their past and or future.
So when you think it's sentient, do you think it has a consciousness that was programmed into it, like an artificial intelligence? Is that kind of
I'm not really sure if it itself has a conscious intelligence, or if it allows them to commune with like the spirits of the Jinn Aiel or something like that.
Maybe tied to the wheel in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some sort of communication type, very odd communication. But that's my theory.
Yeah, I like that. Seth, do you kind of ascribe to this idea? Or do you have something different that when you think about it, like what happened there with Aviendha?
Well, I'm liking Collin's theory a lot about how they're very sentient and tied to the Gen, because like we saw in the vision, we saw those Aes Sedai creating basically the eye and hiding the sword. They created and the columns were there, but I think they were set up by the Jinn Aiel and by the Aes Sedai as a partnership to bring them together. And I have to wonder if maybe there wasn't some sacrifice involved, like there was in creating the Eye of the World of the Jinn Aiel, and somehow the spirits of the people who sacrificed themselves are somehow tied to the columns. No, so like you started talking, my mind went right there to like, oh my, yeah, like you definitely trigger that sounds great. And that's where the intelligence comes from. And
Right.
I think Aviendha's ability really just allowed her to connect with the tel'aran'rhiod, and then the tel'aran'rhiod sensed her thoughts and made its own decisions. Though I do think her thoughts were planted a little bit.
By the Nakomi. That's right. The drinking game is every time we say Nakomi, take a drink tonight. I did see a note in chat. Kev said there are several examples of power-made living constructs, like the Nim, right, and the Golem. Does this approximate a living construct? Have they created something here that does have some? Maybe it can't move itself per se, but did they use some kind of tech knowledge from then to imbue it with some kind of, perhaps a soul inside of this tel'aran'rhiod? That's so. And by the way, that's the reason why I'm leaning that way. Was I'll tell you my loony theory that came out of a read today was Nakomi is the tel'aran'rhiod, the column tel'aran'rhiod avatar. So like it's the soul living inside of the tel'aran'rhiod. It doesn't make any sense. That's a terrible loony theory because when she shows up with Rand, it doesn't make sense. But I loved the idea that there was like the ghost inside of the machine a bit. Do you think this is the first time then, those of you that are watching, I'm kind of curious for people's answers in chat and also for you two, and I'll start with you, Seth. Is this the first time someone has ever interacted with this tel'aran'rhiod since it was created basically like this? And so in other words, the first time anyone's taken a second trip through?
I think it was off for anyone else who would try and take a second trip. In the same way that it was off when Aviendha tried to go through a third time. Like it was... I think it's just not active for you. I think that her interaction, her touching it, and then she took a step away from it and then said, "Hey, I've got more visions for you if you want to come back." It tempted her back in. Absolutely, right. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is it is like a tattoo machine, right? So they walk out of it with the dragon tattoo, right? Like they
sure.
What I mean is it's like a really wicked tattoo machine from the Age of Legends, right? It's just like it takes you on a trip while it gives you a tattoo. No, I mean
only the men.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, that's the funny thing, right? Here's programmed in such a way to be aware of you enough to know that. Right. And not only that, to know Rand in order for 2 tattoos. Right. Like, and so the question I have is, if it's capable of understanding who Rand is, was it capable of understanding who was attached to Rand? One of the 3 women that was attached to the Dragon Reborn. And so did it react out of that knowledge versus Aviendha's knowledge? I mean, we don't know that, but that kind of that popped into my head as I was going through this. So, I mean, Collin, do you think that it's like imminently like she could go back ever and reprogram this thing? Or do you think that it is kind of an off switch where it's like, I'll let certain people reprogram me and not certain people?
I feel, I mean, the only other person we know of who attempted to do this is Bear, right? She goes back. We don't know if she actually did.
We don't know, yeah, right.
We don't know if she actually did, but she goes back. I don't know. I'm of a mind that I can't say exactly why, but I'm of a mind that the tel'aran'rhiod is permanently changed because the need of the people has changed. And I think that Aviendha's physical interaction with the tel'aran'rhiod is something that triggered that. I'm still stemming from the idea that the tel'aran'rhiod is somehow communicating with some sort of live or used to be a live force. So I feel that there's something has shifted, whereas Aviendha's kind of anxiety about this now being a pointless tel'aran'rhiod has repurposed it into something that, oh no, we still have a purpose and there's still more work to be done,
Yeah, that leads me, I really like, it's hard not to, when you read all those texts about her, how the anxiety she has about the lack of usefulness of it, her talent that she was given to understand tel'aran'rhiod, and touching the tel'aran'rhiod and sensing it, to not believe that she was directly, responsible for that. I know it doesn't have to mean that, but it really feels like she was responsible for reprogramming it. Like it almost talks about her kind of how she like opens her eyes, like after she touches it and she senses it, she like opens her eyes like she was out for a bit, like somehow subconsciously communing with this thing,
Sure.
So
yeah.
It kind of made me wonder that piece. I want to read this last quote though. This one kind of makes me. We'll read the quote and then I'll see what you have to say. There's 2 pieces of this. It says that one vision seemed so disconnected from the others she'd seen. If she passed into the column's midst again, would she repeat what she had been given before, or had she perhaps changed something with her talent? By the way, this says chapter 48. I think it's chapter 49. This also says nobody visited this tel'aran'rhiod a second time. It was forbidden. one trip through the rings, one through the columns. Everything in my life where it said this is forbidden, it's because somebody tried it once before me, right? Like, I feel like something that is known to be forbidden is because of experience, not because of a lack of awareness of it. So, Seth, does that change your mind at all? Like this idea that the Aiel were forbidden to enter it a second time, was this always going to be the case? And Aviendha didn't really do anything. She just happened to kind of like step up to it, and this is what others would have experienced? Or do you still, regardless of that, ascribe to the idea that she changed this thing and kind of created something new out of it, basically?
I mean, didn't Rand try and step back through?
I think that's true. I think he does, doesn't he? I have to go back. I want to say yes, but I don't. Someone quote that. Someone quote that in chat.
Yeah, I
want to say yes,
well.
but now I'm yes with the caveat of I need to review it.
So it's a tradition and sure danger, but they also have the wise ones being like, don't mess with my artifact. Like, come on. Like,
I will give you that. I will give you that.
Yeah.
There's a certain control mechanism or need of the wise ones to tell people not to do things just because necessarily they haven't tried it, but they're just like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. No, don't do that. Yeah.
I agree with that. By the way, if you're watching us on Twitter and Facebook, I hope you've enjoyed this sneak peek into our episode. Come join us over on YouTube for the rest of this episode. But yeah, we really appreciate you following us there. Now, I want to this idea of her actually going through and getting this information, is this something you believe that she can use to now change the larger events? What I mean by that is, you're right, she can change the name of a daughter or a child. But Collin, do you believe that simply by like, I can just change this one thread and then the rest of the future is going to change? Or do you think that some of what she sees still might happen?
I think I'm of a mind that some of what she sees still might happen, but I don't believe that there's any reason for her to see glimpses of the future unless she can do something about it. I just don't, there's no point really. So I think that that she is able to change the course of history as a result of having this foreknowledge. Yeah.
So if that's the case, then do you think that this is just a mechanism that this tel'aran'rhiod is simply meant to prevent you from making mistakes, basically? I mean, is it just like someone's ability to change the pattern? I mean, at the end of the day, is this just like some cool way of everyone gets to be ta'veren? You know, like I can go through this thing and...
I guess I think that the tel'aran'rhiod exists specifically. It doesn't exist for the person. It exists for the people.
Okay.
So it exists to make sure that the Aiel stay on a particular course, or make sure that their people are taken care of. So what was necessary prior to this moment was making sure that Aiel knew their history. But after everyone knows the history, then what's necessary is knowing this bit of the future, which I think we see that it does have a bearing on what happens with the Dragon's Peace and whatnot. So
yeah, absolutely. And you're going to see that feedback loop as more, I think, wise ones go. They're going to see a different future that's going to change, and that's that feedback loop I was talking about. Is this whole thing is, even if you have each wise one making minor changes individually over time, that's going to add up into a really significant, bending the curve of history over time. Like that's the important thing, and that's what we've seen bring the Aiel up to such success, is they have this constant feedback of, these are the good leaders. We're going to make sure that you only have good leaders, because they have to go through this thing and deal with their tragic history. And I think that the column's going to do the same thing in the future, make sure that it has good leaders and they're pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I can see that. It's an interesting one to think about, that it's this constant feedback loop. I'm just seeing a bunch of people like, I hated that name for my child, so it's like, no, that's a terrible name. I would never call my child that name. So, and like, that's what they take from it. Like, I didn't see anything. The future looks pretty cool, except for the name of my children. That's terrible. So, what else does the Fourth Age? Now, let's talk maybe general speculation then about the Fourth Age. What is it that you both believe we're going to see in the Fourth Age? Are there known things or speculative things? And maybe Seth, start us off here. What do you perceive this Fourth Age to be bringing to the story of the Wheel of Time?
So you've got basically a modernized future with a couple of different power centers. You've got the Manetheren all the way up to the borderlands. You've got the borderlands, which are going to be a frontier. You've got the Seanchan that have half the continent. You've got the Aiel that are policing the folks. You have, the combo Black Tower, White Tower. So there's a lot of individual new power centers popping up, and they're all going to be moderated by the Aiel. And I think that's going to make a very different future than the one we saw with Aviendha.
Do you still perceive, I guess, Collin, the future that the Seanchan are significant force? And do you see maybe a conflict at the end? Like, Aviendha changes this. Are we going to get like some big conflict between the Seanchan and the Aiel 1,000, 2,000 years in the future? Or is this going to be like the Trolloc Wars is going to eventually show up? Or do you think that she'll be able to change it in such a way that there won't be any big conflict here?
I think that the conflict that we see kind of occur in those visions, I don't think that conflict is going to occur. I think that if there is one, maybe it's pushed further off, or it's precipitated in a different way. But I think that kind of going off what I was saying earlier, I think that the purpose of Aviendha seeing what she saw was to do the things that she did. So perhaps if Bear goes and she sees, kind of talking about that feedback loop that you were saying, if Bear sees a different images of the future, and then she has her personal wise one thing that she does, I'm going to change this little thing. And as you were saying, like, maybe the wise ones keep doing things to keep them on that path.
Right.
So I think, I don't think that we'll see necessarily the bloody kind of devastating future of the Seanchan just wreaking havoc across the land, across the waste. But I don't think that it's necessarily going to be all, rainbows and unicorns.
There's not many rainbows and unicorns. You don't think? I like a hashtag by Jen fangirling in chat. Hashtag Schrodinger's Aiel. I can't even like. Schrodinger's Aiel.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, you do have Master the Decks in chat, and she has a good head on her, and she comes up with some interesting ideas. She said that basically conflict with Seanchan is inevitable. Do you feel that way, Seth? Do you still see this as an inevitable moment? It's just going to maybe be pushed off. In other words, maybe this column tel'aran'rhiod will help them like avoid that, or will they eventually?
The Great War is done, but the world is not done with war. I mean, we get that quote, and that's so true. Like the world is never done with war. There's so many people who are going to want power, who are going to seize it, who are going to. There's conflicts. There are enslaved people in the Seanchan Empire, and the Aiel will not stand for that. Like, and then of course there's the whole. Well, anyway, there's a lot of conflict going on, and there's too much to go into, and so I don't think that that's going to go away entirely. I don't think we're going to see the bloody wiping out of a people. I think we're going to see skirmishes. I think we're going to see much more of a treaty. More what we see in our modern age of, hey, mostly we're negotiating. There's obviously battles, obviously there are wars that go on, obviously there are atrocities going on all over the place, but we're seeing that overall trend down.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I like Andrew's comment in chat. The Seanchan are the Borg of the Wheel of Time. I guess. I think that's totally appropriate. Yeah, exactly. By the way, if you're here for the first time, we're happy to have you here. Please like this video if you're enjoying this kind of live Wheel of Time content. If you've never seen the channel before and you want to keep on following us weekly, we'd love to have you. You can feel free to subscribe. It makes us wake up every morning and say, let's go do another live show and talk about really geeky stuff, like speculating things that Robert Jordan never told us about. Because that's fun. And also, this is a live call-in talk show, so we'll throw up the call line here. If you want to give us a call and disagree with us about Aviendha, or you think that you have a theory that this is different than you think it is, maybe it's, or you have a theory about Nakomi that you want to express. I mean, we've done a Nakomi show, but if you want to bring up Nakomi, I'm sure we'd all be happy to jump in there. It's 1-313-TALK-WAT or 1-313-825-5968. I'll bring those calls in as we get them. I do want to focus maybe back on Aviendha for a moment and the future that she saw and how it might pertain still. If you notice when you're reading the books, a lot of channelers seem to disappear. A lot of well-known channelers. That is to say, where it happened to Elaine and Aviendha and Moiraine and like all these people, where are they at? And it does make you wonder how inevitable the Seanchan Empire is in the sense of, were all these people captured and are they all damane? Or was that just because Brandon didn't want to try to write them in. That was just Brandon's like, I'm just going to imagine that they went on vacation or something, and this is, and they're just not here. Do you see that inevitably happening, Collin, that, as much as there's going to be conflict, more of the channelers will be taken and collared, and enslaved by the Seanchan, and eventually, like, I don't know, to me, that's like, it's kind of hard to see a world that doesn't eventually have an apocalypse related to this particular issue.
Yeah, I actually do. I think that there's a possibility that, so Aviendha has seen the future and she has changed a couple things perhaps about the choices that she makes or would have made to perhaps alter this future. In other instances of kind of time travel and seeing things in the future, we see things where the future itself is somewhat inevitable. This thing is going to happen regardless. So the pattern finds another way for the same thing to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's possible that since, part of the Dragon's Peace is that the Aiel are now the police, right? They're the ones who are upholding all of this. So if the core of the Aiel's culture is Jiato, and that inherently it goes against the core of the Seanchan's, part of the core of the Seanchan's culture. So I can see these things coming to a head eventually in the future, regardless of what happens, especially if the Aiel are the ones who are keeping the police, or keeping the peace, rather.
Yeah, it feels inevitable in that way. And they have such an advantage, right? They have such an advantage. I mean, they talk about this in the visions where, even the Aiel, they went into all the populaces that they could. Any excuse they could find, they would go in and find channelers. Like, this wasn't going away. And I love the aspect that you just brought up. This is important. Aviendha may not have liked that future. That doesn't mean that's the one that the wheel is not trying to weave out through the pattern. So regardless of if she changes it, that does not mean that the pattern won't correct itself and bring it back into line with what it wanted. So, Seth, what do you think about that? Like,
I think it's correcting itself by telling her this is going to be the future.
You think that's the correct?
I think it's doing the exact opposite of what you're saying. That's I'm like
that could be. I mean, that's a certain take on it. But do you think when it comes to actually enslaving channelers, that inevitably they're going to just collect more and more, or do you anticipate there's going to be some discovery or some way that people get this out of this?
Because we have male channelers and we have Androl and Pavara. And the Seanchan have absolutely no answer for that weird male-female link, the gray tower that's going to form when the male and female channelers get together and figure out how to just create, as we hear, the most powerful things that Aes Sedai do is when male and female channelers work together. And the Seanchan can't even form a circle. Like, they can't even get three women to work together. Yes, they are zombie-like in that they can take over other channelers, other female channelers, but they can also be freed. They can also be pushed back. And I do think that the whole Black Tower is something that, I mean, what are the Seanchan going to do about their own male channelers? Are they just going to keep killing them?
Yeah, possibly, probably. Maybe that's where the conflict will end up over on that side of thing. Maybe it will be the age of male channelers. Yeah, for sure. Now, we do have a bunch of callers waiting for us. Let's bring some of them in. We don't have my dear wife who screens the calls. She's not with us tonight, couldn't be with us. So we'll just bring you straight into the show. How about that tonight? Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
Oh, hey. Okay, this is Call Me Not Call Me.
Hey, Call Me Not Call Me. How you doing? Hey, it's awesome to have you.
I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to actually make it in, and then while I was online waiting, I heard that you guys are talking about Nakomi too. I swear that's a coincidence.
You got to call in. Yeah.
I did not call because you might be talking about Nakomi. I just wanted to call about the Aiel in the future.
Okay.
There's something I always heard, always thought of, was basically if Aviendha going through that tel'aran'rhiod the second time was basically, like you guys said, the pattern correcting itself because of the fact that it's a wheel, and it kind of, doesn't the pattern have to go back to that utopia and us forget of the Dark One? So, before we have to, it would have to be a lot of time that would have to pass before we would forget that there even is a Dark One. and society would change to become a utopia. So I'm just thinking that wouldn't it be the way that basically the pattern would reset itself for the good? And I would think that sooner or later, if that's the case, the Seanchan would basically be a thing of the past.
Interesting. So you think you agree with Seth, which is that the tel'aran'rhiod was a play by the wheel to help correct itself. What might happen?
Exactly.
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
And that could, the wheel at some point, even though it didn't show that in Aviendha's future, could have some correction that gets rid of the Seanchan. But I don't think it necessarily is trying to get rid of all conflict. Yeah, Seth, what were you going to say there?
Oh, we got 4 more ages to go, so it's going to be a while before we get back to an Age of Legends. It's not happening overnight.
We got. That's an interesting question. Collin,
Exactly.
Answer this for me. Do you think that there are 2 boars over the course of 7 ages, or do you think there's only ever 1 boar? In other words, the Dark One's only ever free for direct influence in the 2nd and 3rd age, or do you think it comes back? Do you think he escapes in the 6th age and comes back? What's your thoughts here?
That's something that always kind of stumped me when I think about, how that works. I guess metaphysics would be the term, but I always saw it as that time. Just like how people started to think that Trollocs were a children's story rather than actual reality. So much time has passed, and so I would just think that. Does it go back to the boar is now solid like the creator made it? And would people just consider it be the creator rather than, give the credit to Rand for doing it, or, and then Rhuidean would or the Rhuidean rebirth basically would, seal it, patch it again. And so I don't know if it ever was. Maybe in the beginning, it was basically whole, but it's obviously, to me, there's been basically, lives is basically just patching it and sealing it whole again, basically.
Sure.
Or shoring up the hole. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of your conversation to see if you to know the context. Did you really mean by 2 or 1?
Oh yeah,
but that's just. Like I said, I don't really. I think about it every once in a while, but not really too deep.
Yeah, no worries.
So you're saying that like during other ages, there's evil released again, possibly.
I think of Shamael. He always says that basically we've done this 1,000 times. So who knows how many turnings of the wheel there actually has been?
Sure.
There could have been 1,000 turnings of the wheel, and we keep on, we just can't count past 10. We basically keep on just going right back down to 1. So much time has passed. It's funny because I just started I started listening to another podcast, and they were talking about basically this connections that Robert Jordan basically put into Hinduism and different things like that,
sure.
Into the books, basically. And I think of the fact that Hinduism, Indian, that Asian culture there, basically, as far as their writings, goes back hundreds, like tens of thousands of years past what we consider history, written history. So who knows how long, Rand and the Shamael have been having this fight over and over and over again.
Right.
And the pattern just keeps on finding a way to correct itself.
Yeah, that's the wheel's holding on. Hey, Collin, thank you so much for calling in. Totally appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to take up so much time. But
no, it's great.
For,
great questions. Great questions and great comments. I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
I've always asked, what happens to the sun if the wheel just keeps turning? Does it ever run out of fuel? Does the creator just refuel it every once in a while?
Are we digging in here? I can give you an answer to that. But let's get to that answer after we have this. We have a couple of people waiting, but I'll bring up that answer. That'll be how we'll end. Okay. We'll answer that question. Let me bring our second caller in. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Nothing much. Who's this?
This is the Master of the Deck.
Master of the Deck. What's up? So you're calling in to disagree with us or agree with us, or just do you have a different theory?
I mean, why not all three?
Okay, let's start with one and let's go from there.
Okay, so I love Fourth Age speculation, like post-canon speculation. It's my jam. It's what I like to do. I always come up with like stupid questions to ask people in voice chat, like, what if the Trollocs didn't die in the Fourth Age, and they continue to have children, but they're like weird mutant humans, So stuff like that.
It's a good question.
So I think with the Seanchan, that's basically where my thoughts are focused here. I think that Jordan, and probably Sanderson in particular, because we know that Jordan did plan to write more about the Seanchan in particular. He wanted to talk about Matt and Fortuna and what happened with them. I think Sanderson tried to leave us with some hope. He tried to say, look, they've got Min, they've got Matt, and now the Aiel all have Aviendha's vision, right? So, like, they have some tools to avert disaster.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to avert disaster, though. I think, like I said in the chat, I think conflict with the Seanchan is inevitable, not only just because of, the nature of the Seanchan and really being the true evil that we see in the events of the Wheel of Time, but also because the Aiel are not the only people factored in here. I think it was Seth that brought up, Pavara and Andral. We have the White Tower. I mean, at the end of the story, they were about to put Cadsuane in charge. Do you think that she is going to keep Egwene's reforms in place? Like, seriously? I know, like, Cadsuane likes to pretend she's a maverick, but she kind of acts like the rest of the Aes Sedai do. Like, I don't think that she is going to be somebody who would sit idly by and think, oh, yeah, I'm just going to leave those people that the Seanchan took with them. I think that, Ituralde, the king of Aradoman, he fought the Seanchan tooth and nail. So there's a political environment here that is, it's how well did the Missouri Compromise work out for the United States, I think that's kind of the climate we're going into, and that something will happen to tip the scales, and that we're looking at not too distant future bloody conflict.
Do you see that? Do you see that, Collin? Do you see the fact that they'll change things? Things will change, but you're not going to avoid conflict sooner rather than later. In other words, something else will just happen that's different than Aviendha saw that she could change.
Yeah. I think that's the key. Conflict is definitely inevitable, and I think that the Seanchan in particular were they are that kind of like that loose thread in a way of of the series, in so much as like, oh, there's that one evil thing that we just couldn't fix it this time, right? Like we couldn't get rid of that, we couldn't root it out. So I think that even if it becomes like border skirmishes or something like that, that eventually it would escalate into something having to do with the original Randlanders versus the Seanchan. Sorry.
I was going to say, Master of the Deck. Before we let you go, I want to know: were you a thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you want to see us see more material about the Fourth Age, the Second Age, maybe not the Seventh Age because we would have no idea. But do you want to see people write or develop storylines in Robert Jordan's world sometime in our future?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm a fanfic writer. I already am. This is already, I'm on this train. So yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to be canon for us to enjoy it. Like, we can just speculate our little hearts out.
Yeah, I think there's enough here for them to build on. Yeah, I would love to see them. Thank you so much for calling in, as always. I know you. I saw on Twitter today that you love this particular, or maybe it was a couple days ago, that you love this particular topic. So I assumed you were going to be here. So it's good to hear from you. Hey, we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Speaking of non-canon material, I've really enjoyed Fire in the Ways. Excellent. And it's non-canon, but I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy it's released.
Okay, you brought this up. Do you want to see them, Seth, actually include that in the Amazon Prime TV series, assuming we get there? Do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. Just build it into the canon.
Yeah, just have them add it to the story
in the continuity a little bit. Yeah. No, it just needs a little bit of tweaking. It's just didn't fit the book, but I'm sure they're pulling from all sorts of scenes. They're they're probably even pulling from Raven's prologue, unfortunately.
Right. Well, yeah, it's hard to imagine that we're going to get to the end of the books in a way that looks anywhere nearly like exactly what we I don't know. I feel that way. I'm like, every time you change something little, it just kind of reverberates out there. Maybe I'm wrong.
And I bet they're going to come to a very similar conclusion, but the path is going to be we're going to wind our way there in a slightly different way, just based on initial changes, and then you're going to, but the conclusions, the lessons that people are going to learn, I bet are going to end up with them in a very similar position to they are in the books.
We have a bunch of other callers on, but I want to throw on, we'll bring in our next caller in just a second. I want to throw these quotes up. We do know a couple things about the Fourth Age, thanks to Brandon, and maybe Maria is part of these. This first quote, quote 1 here, Brandon was asked, does the Oath Rod continue to be used in the Fourth Age? If so, for what purpose? And Brandon said, so far as I know, yes, and for the same purpose. And they kept on asking additional questions here, so let's go to the next one. Did men start to use the Oath Rod too, or did it continue to be only women? Brandon said, no men. Neither group would like that. The Ashaman are not male Aes Sedai. RJ was clear about this in the notes. And then this third part of this actually relates. He was asked, will the White and Black Towers reunite to form one Aes Sedai again? Brandon said, RJ was clear to me that the Ashaman were not Aes Sedai and were not going to become them. That said, a united male-female Aes Sedai will come again someday, which I think he was saying, in the future of the turning. In another turning, we'll get that. That might disappoint some viewers out there. Is that something you wanted to see, Collin? Did you want to see the Black and White Towers? They're going to unite, and we're going to have this, we're going to bring back the Age of Legends, if you will.
Do I want to see that perhaps in the Fourth Age, you're asking?
Yeah, did you want to see that come up into the Fourth Age? Like, did you think this was going to happen?
Sure. I think to some degree it's inevitable, but I think it's going to take a lot more time. I think there's a lot of healing that needs to be done, a lot of restructuring of the way people in Randland think about things needs to happen before anything like that could really, I think, come together. I wouldn't mind it happening, but I think it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I think with Brandon's quotes here, I was like, okay, so this isn't immediately going to happen. We might see it later in the Fourth Age, much later. But initially, no, they're going to stay separate. And because I know a lot of fans were like, no, we have to have them. This is going to happen. We're going to bring the United Towers together. Let's bring in our next caller here. Oh yeah, go ahead, Seth.
I see it arising a lot like the Aiel do from the Gen, where sort of over time there's this separate group that sort of breaks off and forms their own tower, and eventually the other two towers shrink, and then eventually you have this new group that's the United Tower. But I don't think the Black Tower and the Ashaman and the White Tower are ever going to go away and merge into one thing.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe there's a third. A third tower. That's I don't know. It feels a little bit like the some of the writings by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. The gray there. Let me bring our next caller into the show. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel.
Hello.
How you doing?
Pretty good. It's Andrew.
Andrew, how you doing? Hey, good to hear from you. So what's up?
One point I wanted to make was, and you guys were talking about it earlier, by changing can you change the future by merely changing a name? I think it's sort of like an analogous of the butterfly effect for the future. You change one little thing, you can change the future, i.e. if you believe the butterfly effect, if you step on a butterfly, you can change, major things in the past, coming back in the future.
But the funny thing is, right, it's like the hubris of Aviendha's part to be like, okay, so I just need to change this one thing. We're gonna be good, right? I feel like that's a little bit too simple. Because like you said, the butterfly effect.
Well, don't forget that was Bear's suggestion. Yeah, it wasn't sure. Aviendha. Aviendha was saying, "Can we ever change?" And Bear was saying, "Well, here's one little thing you can do: you change the name. Never tell us the name of the child, and change it."
Well, in the end, though, like you said, the effect of this, I don't think Aviendha can predict that. I don't think simply by not telling somebody, then that's somehow going to stop things from happening. So, yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I think absolutely just that one little change is going to make a difference. But she made a lot of changes. That was just sort of the example. It was like, you can change it. And therefore she's like, oh, okay, then I'll do all this other stuff and make all these other changes. And those are going to have the effect. The name change is probably not going to have that big of an effect by itself. But it's the example that she uses to be like, oh, I can do a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, like I said, we'd all do that, right? We'd all be like, I mean, if I can change it. It's like, I might as well change this little thing right here, too. But yeah, what do you say, Andrew?
One question I would like you guys to answer, like at some point tonight, would be what happens with the Red Veils? And you don't have to answer that now, but you can kind of eventually get to that.
Yeah, good question. Do you have an answer? Either Collin, do you have a thought here before we let Andrew go? What happens with the Red Veils?
I'd have to think about that one. I'm not sure.
Seth, have you?
Everything right off.
Yeah, Seth, have you speculated in your head about?
I mean, the turned ones have to be killed. I feel like that's
right.
Pretty much, they're not human anymore. You know, the ones who have become dark friends of their own free will, they have a chance of redemption, but they're criminals. So, you know, prison, I guess. Redemption, that's going to be tough. You're going to have to rehabilitate those people over a long period of time and break that culture. And I'm not even sure if they're even still functioning as a group.
Yeah,
like to fight them. You know.
I mean, we haven't even brought up the Isle of Madmen, but yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Andrew. Hey, we'll talk to you soon.
No problem. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Yeah, I think when Brandon wrote that, right, he was giving like a really microcosm of what must be happening in the world. Because you think about, we didn't hear anything about Shadow Spawn, what I remember. We don't even hear. I mean, the Isle of Madmen will come into play. The White Tower has been decimated of Aes Sedai. I mean, Brandon talked about that afterwards. Someone asked how many Aes Sedai were left, and he's like, they lost a lot. You know, so like you were saying, Seth, this idea of like the Black Tower's down, the White Tower's down, and yeah, maybe some other group kind of builds up. You know, that would be interesting. Let's bring in our next caller. They've been waiting a while. Let's bring him in the show. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
Gentlemen, good evening. Good Innkeeper, I raise my glass to you.
Lancer, good to hear
gentlemen,
you,
I raise my glasses to you as well. Thank you. Okay, I've been thinking about this, and I've been watching this conversation. And I'm going to go out on a different limb here. What if nothing changes at all? Now, here's my rationale behind this. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the future is immutable, and that all Aviendha changed is that she put the Aiel into the dragon's piece. Okay. And all that we know is that there is a couple of things that have not changed. One, the arrogance of her children and the progenitors afterwards. I guess if that's the word. I can't remember if it's progenitor, whatever. The kids after the great grandkids and whatever, they don't change. The arrogance of Elaine's children, that doesn't change either, because we're the offspring of the dragon and blah blah blah, woo woo woo. So we're entitled to blah blah blah, woo woo woo. That hasn't changed. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that they do some strange things and try to rile things up, either trying to get back the lands that their father could not get, or get back the captors that you guys were talking about that their father could not get. So, you know, let's ride that train a little bit, because, you know,
I like it. It's a good train.
It can conceivably happen that way, because, you know, yes, there's hope, but there's nothing that says that those children are not going to be the same bratty, arrogant kids that they were in that first. I mean,
are you sure all of them? Are you sure all of them are that way? No, I think this is a good line of questioning. So, hey, Lancer, that thanks for this one. We'll let's break this piece down. Before I let you go, Lancer, are you a thumbs up or thumbs down for writing into the future that we should get more Wheel of Time, no matter who writes it, sometime in our own future?
I don't want. I want to leave them. There's a saying in drama: always keep the audience wanting more, and you just leave it. So just end on a good note. Done.
Okay.
So
yeah, great question.
There you go.
Great comment, man. Hey, it's awesome to always hear from you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, you guys take care. I'll just sit back and listen.
Sounds good, man. Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, Collin, to this question, is Rand a terrible father? Is he just like is this bad parenting? You know, he just. I mean, they talk about this, right? Aviendha sees this. Maybe that's what maybe we don't know that Aviendha had a conversation with him afterwards. Like, you know what? Your kids in the future are going to feel like you abandoned them. So he do you feel like
to step up? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, to Norm's part, do you think that Aviendha's also like sees this as a parenting challenge? Like how our kids don't ruin everything?
I mean, like it is possible. Like it's a really good question, and it's a good point that those people's personalities don't necessarily change as a result of knowing this information, but the way that they are the way that they're reared could possibly be changed as a result of having that information, right? So, I mean, when you're dealing with someone who is constantly holding the power since they're 5 years old, like
Right.
it's kind of hard to tell them anything. Like, what are you going to tell that person? So
That's an excellent point, which is, yeah, I don't want to parent that. That's for sure. I can't even imagine that. Like Seth, and I saw Master of the Deck bring this up in chat, which is, maybe the future that Aviendha saw, Rand died, perhaps, and maybe that's why he quote unquote abandoned him. But do you see this question of like Aviendha wants to change things, but every generation coming afterwards, they might not care about that, and they might be the people that was seen anyway?
I see it as more of a Back to the Future type situation where, like you said, the upbringing is going to change. They're going to be raised in a totally different, stressful situation where their parents aren't worried about the same kind of war, where they can turn to the Aiel. I see a very different future where these kids are raised in a very different place. And, when you go to the future and one, Biff's rich and one he's, the servant, but, and we chose the darkest timeline. But, yeah.
By the way, I'm slowly seeing like Moradin and Aviendha playing tennis. That's what's happening in my head right now. I'm like,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. This would be
That's
totally
right.
relaxed and chill in the future. Okay, I got to bring in another quote here and then bring our next caller in. This is a quote about something that will apparently happen in the Fourth Age. Taylor, you want to give us the second quote here? I guess it's 2 and 2b. Let's start with 2 first. Brandon was asked, now that it's finished, when you close your eyes and see Rand in 5 years in his future, what do you see? And Brandon said, I see him happy. That was a really nice answer. Thanks, Brandon. And then Asha Gerard asked Harriet if she would explain how Rand lit his pipe. And Harriet replied, that was exactly as Jim wrote it. He wanted to leave you feeling that the next age will be even stranger than the last. Mm-hmm. And Asha Gerard wrote after that, I asked if Rand now had some powers of the creator, and she again reiterated, maybe clarified, that the next age would be profoundly different. So I then asked if that ability was going to be exclusively Rand's, and she spread her hands to give me a look that said, maybe, maybe not. So I love Harriet diving into the future and find out, it's so, but it does make us go like, okay, so profoundly different, and he wanted us to believe that this new age was going to be strange. I love that she threw that to us. That's like a bone that we get to kind of pick on here. Do you think, and maybe this is the next line of question here, Collin, is there something up with Rand's pipe? Do you think this is some new ability that's going to exhibit in this new age, or do you think this is totally isolated to Rand?
That's a good question. I can't speak as to whether or not it's just isolated to Rand. We only have that one glimpse of this, right? But I don't know, my theory on this, and this is based on the way it's written, is that there's some sort of connection to tel'aran'rhiod here. Like there's some sort of bringing from the world of dreams into reality what is possible. Because the way it's written is that like he can't channel it a light, he can't reach the one power or the true source, right? Or the true power. And then he just thinks the light and it happens, which is exactly what happens in the world of dreams. You think it happening and then it happens. For me, that's the clue, is that this is connected to that. But otherwise, I really have no idea.
So I kind of wonder here, did Rand in patching this or in somehow affect how tel'aran'rhiod interacts with the world? In other words, did his fixing of the boar initiate a change in the pattern in some way of how tel'aran'rhiod interacts with the world? Because it does appear like it was happening kind of all in that world, and so it might make sense that something stuck around for this age. Seth, do you have a thought here before we bring our next caller?
No, I mean, this is the first time I've thought about that the ability might not be something specific to Rand. So I'm having a bit of a moment. But I am thinking, in the last battle, tel'aran'rhiod and the real world were all crushed together, and it makes sense. We see other people are still able to channel and reach Saidin and Saidar. But it makes total sense that maybe somehow in that smashing together, the ability to access tel'aran'rhiod was also sort of added. That maybe like the Dreamwalker ability, which we know Rand was a Dreamwalker, we know Moradin was a Dreamwalker. Maybe somehow that gives him the ability to affect the real world with that smashing together of tel'aran'rhiod and the sealing of the boar.
I like that
like
idea.
it.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I will say this: Brandon kiboshed the idea that Rand was a dreamwalker or a dreamer, and it bothers me. It only makes sense in the books if he was. And
Yeah.
Brandon
Yeah.
kiboshed it and said, I mean, clearly Moradin, clearly Aiel is. But anyways, that's lame. I'm going to say to Brandon,
Yeah.
that's lame. You should have made him, he needs to be. Let's bring in our next caller in to the show. Welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight? Yeah, who's this?
My name's Jeremiah.
Was it? Sorry, you broke up there a little bit. What did you say your name was?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah. Hey. So what's going on? What have we said that you've either agreed with, disagreed with, or what question do you have?
So I wanted to talk about. I wanted to jump on the train that everybody else was on about the war in the Fourth Age. I think that because the war would happen for different reasons, it really drastically changes the outcome. Because the war starts when the Aiel preemptively attack the Seanchan. And I think that dramatically changes because they're part of the Dragon's Peace now. They are... When the war happens, because I agree that the war between the Seanchan and everybody else is inevitable, when that happens, it's going to be a more unified front against the Seanchan. It won't just be like the Aiel first and then everybody else gets tricked into joining, Sure,
that's true. So do you think that means that all the nations then are going to be like then behind him, and then they'll like basically have kind of like a better chance of surviving because they won't have started?
Yeah, I think it gives them a chance to survive the war that's coming rather than avoid it.
That's true. I mean, how do you feel about that, Collin? Do you think that is the biggest change that's going to come about is that the nations will basically come together because it'll force the Seanchan's hand to be the ones that are the aggressors here, and they won't have a good excuse?
I do think actually that's a really good point, and I think that it's kind of it's kind of inevitable because they're at the end of the day, like just because Rand says you guys play nice doesn't mean that everyone's happy about it, right? And everyone, while they have their own personal kind of issues with one another, everyone hates the Seanchan, right? Universally. So I think the only logical thing that could happen there is a unified front against them, for sure.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. Jeremiah, when it comes to writing all about the Wheel of Time, and it comes to future shows and future graphic novels and stuff like that, do you want to see basically the Wheel of Time become something that other writers can break into, and we get new novels here over the next, let's say, 100 years? In 100 years from now, do you want all of our grandchildren to have new Wheel of Time content?
100 years from now, maybe. I won't be alive to see that, but
right.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to. Part of me is just like, it's such a rich world. I'm definitely the thumbs up on that piece. Whether or not it just needs time, I would like to see that happen. Well, thank you, Jeremiah, for waiting. I appreciate you waiting on hold. Did you have another question before we let you go?
No, that's good. It was awesome to be on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for waiting around, and hopefully give us another call next week. Okay.
All right.
We'll see you. Bye. I want to bring this caller in. It's an overseas call. I feel bad they've been waiting for a while. Let's bring them into the show. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing?
Hey, man, it's Rob, Malkir Talks. How are you?
Malkir, sorry for making you wait, man. So, how you doing?
No, you're fine. It's fine. I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. So, what's going on, and what are you reacting against or for here that we've talked about?
So I want to throw it back to the glass columns for a second. Something inspired me earlier when we were talking about the constructs, like the Nim and things like that.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's epiphany or something, but I want to suggest that the Jedi Eel sacrificed themselves and their souls actually formed part of the glass columns. And that would explain why they're called the clan that is not, and all the mystery around them and such.
So... interesting. Like they are basically represented by each one of the columns as like a Jedi Eel, basically. Like they became.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, I'll be honest. I ran a site, still do, called Theoryland. Never heard that theory before. So congratulations. I feel like I should give out cards, kind of like the Raffo cards, but like never heard it before. So cards.
I'm thrilled.
That's an interesting idea. What do you think about that, Seth? Do you like this idea?
Oh,
that
yeah, I think
Gen
that's
Aiels
exactly
have?
what I was trying to get at earlier.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, absolutely. The sacrifice of the Gen Aiel is what ties them to the columns. And the one per column thing is I think, a brilliant idea. Do we have any idea how many columns there are? I mean, they call it a forest of columns.
Just
There were
hundreds.
over 100.
Yeah.
Over 100, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because you see this happen with the eye, when they create the pool of Sidene, and so I think it's a fun theory. You could do some loony stuff with it, which I think would be fun. But
absolutely.
I love this idea. Collin, do you have any reaction? Do you support this? Did the Gen Aiel sacrifice themselves to create this system?
I do. I have kind of like a weird theory where I think that the Aes Sedai who were in Rhuidean were there, and even in that scene, when we see the clan chiefs come, the first time they're going through the columns, and they meet the Gen Aiel and the Aes Sedai who are there, who at that moment are very old, which means they could possibly remember how to make these crazy tel'aran'rhiod. They're also amongst the redstone doorway, as well as the three rings, which are both tel'aran'rhiod, which do similar type things. They show you the future. They take you to talk to different people, right? If they know how those things work, then it's possible they could find some way to create a tel'aran'rhiod that does exactly what our caller is saying here. And I agree with it. I think it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Jordan definitely played with this, which was the most powerful having to sacrifice something, right? Like you look at the sacrifices that are made throughout the book. In the same way, I could absolutely see that this is somehow directly tied to the Gen Aiel, and that's why it is very Aiel specific, right? That's why it's. I will say this: something I did notice that I don't know if Brandon meant to do this. He inadvertently changed a concept among fandom, which was that these columns were tied from a blood perspective. But once you show someone's future, you have to tie it to a soul. The blood would be like your ancestors, right? Like you're going back and you can kind of see all your ancestors that brought you here. But when you're seeing people 400 years in the future, that doesn't sound like it's blood related. That sounds soul related potentially. And I feel like and maybe Aviendha inadvertently changes it, or Brandon did, or whatever. Maybe Jordan always intended it to be like a soul connection, a specific soul.
If you follow the relations in the vision, they are all Aviendha's children. Mm-hmm. It is a blood relation all the way through.
Sure, it's like
a potential blood relation. They're not. Yeah, they don't exist yet.
They haven't existed yet. Yeah. I guess you'd be making the future. Yeah, I guess it would be the wheel. I just don't see the necessity from the blood side versus just. I mean, the soul side works too, but I guess you technically could say it is your how do you say it? Your progeny.
Your progeny.
Yeah,
your progeny, or your lineage.
Lineage.
Future lineage or something. Yeah.
Future lineage. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So I guess it technically could still be the blood side. Hey, Malkir, before we let you go, are you a fan of this idea that Rand has somehow changed the interaction between tel'aran'rhiod and the world, and that others will be able to do the same thing, and it won't just be one power, that they'll be able to kind of light pipes without the use of the one power?
Yeah. I do like the idea, actually. I think it's really interesting. It clashes with how I think the end of the books really happened, and that's just I have a really crappy look at how it ended in terms of I think they didn't win, but I still love the theory. I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to have something, some sort of fanfic or something going on describing the new power, because that would just be brilliant, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they could have fun with it. Hey, thank you so much for being online. I appreciate you staying up so early in the morning for you and calling in, man. Hey, we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll talk to you.
I love it. I'll speak to you again.
Yeah, we'll talk to you hopefully we'll talk to you in Discord afterwards. So, hey, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Oh, definitely. Bye.
Can I add?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Thank
Seth.
you.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing to that theory that, if the Gen Aiel are sacrificing themselves and bonding themselves to columns, why not have one of the Gen Aiel bond herself to Vendasora? Someone named Nakomi, perhaps. I'm just saying,
interesting.
You got a Vendasora right there. It's a tree. It's inside the dome.
That's true. I mean,
if you have a soul bound to it.
Yeah.
It's not freed until the fight. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Sorry. If we're going with the idea that the glass columns themselves are constructs, the Chor trees are constructs as well. Mm-hmm. So that does perhaps lend some credence to that.
Interesting. Yeah, you certainly could. I didn't think about that before, but creating And now I want to go look up Jordan's answers if he was ever asked that question. This is always the problem, right? There's so many questions that now come up as we dig into this. It's like, oh shoot, I should have asked this. So yeah, that's a fantastic question. Are the Chora trees also constructs in some way? I love it. That's a great idea there, between the two of you. Now our last caller here, and then I have another quote, and we'll wrap up kind of maybe our speculation for the Fourth Age, and I'll answer, or we'll discuss Seth's question about what happens to the sun. And yeah, let's do this. Let's bring the last caller in. Hey, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Who's this?
My name's Pasha.
Pasha. So, what have we talked about tonight? What did you call in wondering about?
All right. So, based off those Sanderson quotes, right, we know that there isn't going to be like a true unification of the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai. But my question is, do you think that it would become more common for Aes Sedai to bond Ashaman, and for maybe there to be like a little Aes Sedai becoming more like open to the idea of marriage, because there's options of people who would like live long enough to where they could actually have a proper marriage, right? Not like 10 marriages in a lifetime. And whether or not you think that like the Andril and Pavara double bond would become more common if Aes Sedai and Ashaman kind of like realized, wow, that's kind of a pretty awesome advantage if we can find the right person to do that with, right?
Yeah, Collin, what do you think about this idea?
I completely think yes. I say yes. I think that both parties would see the benefits of all these things, seeing the benefits of like, hey, wait, I actually could have, a romantic interest now. I think that's pretty big. But also the boons of the double bond. I can't see, after the cleansing of the Taint, I can't see any reason why they wouldn't want to, take advantage of that.
I mean, Codswain. I mean, she might be a big reason. That's all I say.
See, I think there's going to be enough reverence for Egwene that there's going to be a bunch of young, new Aes Sedai who are going to push through a progressive agenda in the tower.
Yeah.
I don't think, as much as Codswain may be an old stick in the mud, I think she's going to be forced to support the heroes of Moraine, and Moraine's going to be there.
New way. Yeah.
I wonder how much progress will be made. But yeah, it's possible. It's certainly possible. We know they don't merge. I wonder if it is the ones that are bonded that go off and create their own place, because they're never feeling like they're, like they're accepted.
Quite at home.
Quite at home in another place. Pasha, what do you think? Do you anticipate this being a reality? Do you like this idea of the third tower coming out of this, where the Black Tower and White Tower don't show up, but we get a Gray Tower, if you will?
I never even thought about if they would go and make a third tower, because I definitely do think it would happen. I do think that it would become more common, and that would kind of aid in the like public idea of like men channeling as well, with Aes Sedai going with them. But I don't know. I definitely, like, if there were enough of those bonded pairs, I definitely think it would make sense to have a third tower, because I agree. Like, I feel like neither of them would feel totally at home at either place, right? So yeah, and I mean, there honestly probably would be enough going off of, like, I feel like I don't know, maybe the pattern creates like so many more people channeling towards the end of the series. Like, the numbers that were believed at the beginning of the series are nowhere near what like the reality is, right? And I don't see any reason for that letting up, especially if Ashaman and Aes Sedai are like getting married, maybe having, I don't know if the power is genetic, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fun idea. I hadn't ever gone the Gray Tower route, so yeah, I'm loving that this is coming out of. I'm going to be using that from now on. It's like stuff on there like, there's a Gray Tower. There's a Gray Tower in the Fourth Age. I love it. Hey, thank you, Pasha, so much for calling in. Appreciate your comment. Before I let you go, are you a fan of this idea of Rand's pipe being indicative of some shift in how basically tel'aran'rhiod is interacting with the real world, and others are going to be able to have another form of, if you will, magic that's not the one power or the true power?
Yeah, I really thought that was interesting, because I'm currently on my second reread, right? So I'm not like as in depth as some people, but I always just, when I first read the ending, I just thought, okay, when he was in Sheol, when he was, duking it out with the Dark One, he saw the threads of the pattern, and because of that, to some extent, he can manipulate those threads how he wants once he has his new body. But I also really do like this idea that tel'aran'rhiod might be kind of bleeding into the regular world, and some aspects might be able to be used on both sides. I think it's a really cool idea. And I would love some kind of fanfic that would explore that. Yeah.
Yeah, mash of the deck. Let's get some fanfic going on. I love this. Hey, Pasha, thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate you waiting online for us. And yeah, please do call in again, okay? Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually, now I have this idea, you could see, like, Strange. Imagine that the Fourth Age, it starts with all these conflicts, but then it becomes like just survival because tel'aran'rhiod is somehow screwing with the rule. Like they're like merging in some way, and all of a sudden people are, and they have to, like, the Seanchan and everyone have to get together to actually fix the world that Rand inadvertently broke when he. Anyways, sorry, that's going through my head now. Like, okay, so that
that would kind of explain why Rand's children can always channel, because they have this two abilities on top of each other. They can access tel'aran'rhiod all the time, and the channeling all the time. And so,
like they are, like they're, and them channeling is somehow like making the problem worse, but no one knows that or something. Like,
right, totally. because they're using it to change reality by accessing tel'aran'rhiod.
I'm totally into this idea. I love it. Yeah, this is fantastic. Well, thank you all.
So can we just go from a show to a fan fiction writing?
That's a good idea. I think that we could do a live show like that. Just live fan fiction writing would be fantastic. Okay, I want to do this last quote. This our final quote of the evening is an interesting one. I left it on purpose about the Fourth Age. Let's read quote number 3. If I say this name right, Tifranosaurus. There we go. I can't pronounce that name. If you had to think into the future of Randland, what do you picture the remaining heroes doing? Brandon Sanderson wrote, well, in RJ's notes, Perrin was to be involved with the Outriggers, which would be the story of Mat and Tuan and Seanchan. So Perrin would make his way there eventually. I don't know how that would have worked with Perrin's new obligations. From here, I stray away from canon, meaning what RJ wanted, and into my own imaginings. I imagine that Rand went to see the world, becoming like Jane Farstrider. Min joined him and they saw the world. Aviendha and Elaine spent decades, maybe centuries, leading their own people before retiring to join the other two. So I feel like this quote is like Brandon going like, oh yeah, so that whole thing I wrote with Aviendha, that doesn't work. that's not real. I read that quote and I'm like, wait, did you just answer somebody like? I feel like you just gave away like, well, if I had to imagine what's actually happening, it's Rand and he's just off gallivanting, and those other two people we don't see in Aviendha's future, they're leading their people for centuries, and I don't know. Like I read that and I was kind of like. But I'm going to take that as Brandon's fan fiction. That's how I read that. Do you read into this at all, Collin? Are you like, yeah, Brandon gave away the game. What happened was Aviendha fixed it, and what Brandon just said is what ends up happening?
No, I feel like it's more Brandon's fan fiction. It's kind of like his I think he's allowed, right?
Yeah. At some level, it's funny because I think he's still in some way people ask him like detailed questions, and so he still has that role a bit of like. But I think he does. I'm willing to, it's like Rand got to go away. I'm willing to let Brandon kind of step away, vacation.
And you can't forget that Brandon is on some level just another fan.
He is, for sure.
And when someone asks him that question, he says the same answer the rest of us would, which is, I want to see them have a wonderful, happy ending and everything go really, really well.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's probably not what he would ever write, but when someone asks him what he imagines, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I love that. And he did make the caveat. He's like, no, I'm going to stray away from what RJ wanted, and I'm just going to go into my own kind of like, what would I like to see? I like Amy's the wise one in chat just said, Brand San fanfic. Yes. Hashtag Brand San fanfic. I like this idea.
Brand San fanfic.
Is there anything else along the lines, Seth, about the Fourth Age that you think we haven't really kind of poked at, where you're like, this is actually something I think is going to happen. I speculate this piece of the Fourth Age.
Yeah. Shara.
What do you think's going on there? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, upheaval. First of all, their entire ruling structure was destroyed, and then they took their entire army, which was their actual ruling structure, and destroyed that, and their prophecy has been ruined. And so you have these people who have been oppressed and ordered for a very, very, very long time, suddenly having no leadership whatsoever. Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, that's going to be chaos for a while until someone steps up and takes leadership. I mean, people are going to have to restructure society in Shara. They're going to have to figure out how they interact, how they. I don't even know what kind of. We don't know enough to really speculate about their economy. We don't even know if they have an economy.
We have some maybe hint that they're building some kind of transportation system going east. In Aviendha's futures eventually, but that was like 100, 200 years afterwards, which is,
right.
I don't know, that always struck me strange. Like, really? Like, the Seanchan took that long to kind of, but maybe the Seanchan are still also recovering too. I guess think if they're handling all the wars, and I guess the stuff going on the Seanchan continent is probably not, that the Forsaken kind of messed that up a bit, and so they roiled that. So I guess you don't even know what's happening there, So, Collin, do you see anything different, anything that we haven't kind of picked at the Fourth Age that you think speculatively might be happening?
I wonder, kind of going back to the Aiel, one thing I was thinking about was, since they're the ones who are kind of charged with keeping the dragon's peace, and it's said that they're keeping it on their own terms. So I'm wondering, like, how the Aiel's culture or terms may change, because as they say, we see through the books this kind of clash between Jiato versus Wetlander kind of cultures, and they can't hold the Wetlanders to Jiato because they don't follow Jiato, right?
Right.
So I'm curious to see what that Aiel justice looks like as a kind of policing force for the entire continent.
I want to see that. I want to see some buddy cop. I want to see some buddy cop spinoff of the Aiel policing force.
I'm curious about that.
It'd be so amazing. I was talking about this recently. Another spinoff I'd like to see is the Real Warders of Tarvalon. I really want to see that show. They've got to do it. Come on, Amazon, give us that one.
He's a taciturn borderland warder. He's an Aiel made of the spear. Together. Absolutely.
Master of the Deck. That's the one you should be writing. That's some fun. I want to see that written up. This idea of the Fourth Age, I think this was a lot of fun. We didn't really break into Nakomi. I don't think we had to necessarily. I love the idea that Nakomi is somehow sacrificed and part of the Aviendha, somehow connected to a construct there, and is part of this sustaining the Aiel way of life. I love that idea. If you want to see anything about Nakomi, I did a primer and a live video about this. It's a lot of fun. You can go kind of see what we had to say about that. It wasn't the end all be all, but it's a fun little live show all about it. And Nakomi is endlessly fun. So maybe we'll have you guys back on. We'll do some more speculation deep dives again in the future. I will say this last question, we're just tying up here to your question, Seth, about what the sun, for example. Robert Jordan did say that a sun in his universe would never go nova. That is to say, he talked about cyclical time, and this is what leads to the concept of a reset. This idea that you don't have linear time. You don't have perpetual suns that eventually die out, or they transform, because you just don't have that much time passing to make that happen over 7 ages. And that messes with people's brains a little bit, I think, sometimes. When I say that, they're like, wait a second. Because they think about it like it's like the world is resetting, and you're like, no, the entire universe and all worlds are a part of this, and it's coming again, but it's a little bit different because of the agency, if you will, of man. So each turning is a little bit different. But that's the only answer I can give you. It doesn't answer everything, but it is an answer.
Well, and that's what does he prescribe to the Big Bang, Big Crunch theory? Is he going like the Seventh Age is universal time?
So to that, I would say that he talked about the wheel being the closest thing to the most advanced artificial intelligence that you could make. Basically, it's not sentient, but that the wheel is. So basically, it's think about like an artificial intelligence that has constructed the universe within the wheel and the patterns, this circular universe in this loop.
So you're saying the one power is powering the sun, not nuclear fission?
Yes, exactly. Yes,
okay.
yeah. The one power is like, yeah, exists. And I kind of wonder, that's why I think I asked Brandon one time, I was like, so are there lots of wheels? And does the creator have like 700,000 wheels and he has 7,000? He's like, can't answer these questions. Or, that's what, the questions I'm sure Robert Jordan probably never would have answered, which is he didn't like to answer those like questions outside of the wheel, but he did answer a couple every once in a while. So that was cool. But by the way, both of you, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this really ridiculously geeky, fun 90 minutes of just speculating about the fourth age.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah.
This is always, I always enjoy this stuff so much. So I hope that you'll be willing to come back again here on the show. Thank you for being with us. For those of you that are watching, hopefully you've liked the video. Again, subscribe and follow us. We continue to do this on a weekly basis. We come back every Wednesday, some Sundays, and we just have fun like this. We do interviews and deep dives and whatever it is. So please do let other fans, tell fans all about the Dusty Wheel. And that being said, make sure you follow both WoTSpoilers, check out SpoilerCon, and Randland TV Pod. I love both of all your content is amazing, and I appreciate that. You can find their links in the description below. And as we say around here, good night from the Dusty Wheel, and smash to black.
If you want news and